Resuming debate, reprise du débat, the honourable member for Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm thankful for the opportunity to rise and speak to this bill today. The cause of fair elections is one close to my heart. Ever since Guelph became ground zero for a concerted and malicious campaign in the last election to willfully mislead non-conservative voters to the wrong polling locations on Election Day, May 2nd, 2011. The subsequent investigation has demonstrated where we lack the ability to effectively pursue electoral fraudsters. Yet, it is as if this Conservative government and its minister have learned nothing from what happened in Guelph. Instead, it seems like they are more interested in punishing Elections Canada and the Chief Electoral Officer for some imagined anti-conservative transgression. How else could they explain that our top election official was left out in the cold and not consulted when it came to expansive legislation that makes significant changes to how we conduct our elections? Frankly, over the past couple of days of debate and questions, the minister has seemed quite proud of the fact that he sat through a meeting with Mr. Mayrand only to ignore his most pertinent recommendations and go on to draft the same toothless bill they planned to draft before they met with him. I know the minister claims there was consultation, but it is quite clear from the immediate comment from Elections Canada spokesperson John Enright that, and I'm quoting, "The Chief Electoral Officer has not been consulted," and, quote, "There's been no consultation on the bill in the immediate wake of the minister's statement." Had there been true consultation, the bill might have provided the resources and tools requested by Mr. Mayrand in October when he said, "Without that power to compel, it adds time and complexity to investigations, and sometimes they get into a dead end for lack of cooperation from witnesses." Similarly, this echoes the statement of the Commissioner of Canada Elections, Yves Côté, who asked for further investigative powers and the ability to compel the provision of information. He explained in his first annual report, "It regularly happens in the course of our investigations that we approach individuals who we know will have information relevant to a file we are working on, only to be told that they do not wish to talk to us. They refuse to say anything." We've all seen this to be the case in Guelph, where 2.5 years later we still do not have any more of an idea who Pierre Poutine is and just how coordinated a plot it was to misdirect voters, forcing them to the wrong polling stations. On Election Day 2011, a fraud was perpetrated across Canada in over 200 ridings, and yet to this day, only one charge has been laid, in large part because Elections Canada lacks the teeth or the tools it needs to seize documents before they are destroyed or compel testimony so as to advance the case and find the perpetrators. The minister has stated that his reforms will enable the Commissioner of Canada Elections to seek stiffer penalties for a wider range of offences. But what is that really accomplishing when there has been no augmentation to the Commissioner's investigative powers? What good are stiffer penalties if you cannot find and convict the perpetrators? Rhetorical flourishes like sharper teeth, longer reach, and a freer hand may paint a delightful picture for government messaging, but they are hollow words in the face of an enforcement regime that has no ability to find those who perpetrate frauds or effectively enforce the Canada Elections Act. It is like raising the fine for speeding but taking away the radar guns. Equally concerning is the bizarre move of the Commissioner for Canada Elections away from Elections Canada and to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Not only does moving the Commissioner's desk not increase his investigative powers, it effectively silos him off from Elections Canada and the data they possess. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to advise you and ask your permission to split my time with the member from Winnipeg North.
Yes, yes.
I cannot square away how this government believes that a freer hand comes from changing the commissioner to a government appointment and making him accountable not to Parliament, but to the Attorney General of the day. One can only hope that this is not a result of the frequent examinations of the Conservative Party by Elections Canada and its commissioner, be it on the In-N-Out scandal, the sad tale of former Conservative Minister Peter Panashaway, the ongoing tale of the Prime Minister's former parliamentary secretary, or even the Conservative Party's connection, as stated by Federal Court Justice Richard Mosley, to the fraudulent Election Day calls from the Conservative Party's SIMS database. From comments made by the Minister and other members, it would almost seem as if they do not believe the Chief Electoral Officer is impartial, something which he is statutorily bound to be. I think it was this paranoia that led the Minister to proclaim that the, and I'm quoting, the referee should not be wearing the team jersey, as if it is some invisible bias that caused Elections Canada to enforce the provisions of the Elections Act when Conservatives did wrong. In effect, what they are doing is punishing the guy who caught them, or at least his office. Mr. Mayran put it best yesterday when he stated that these changes are taking the referee off the ice, sidelining him so he cannot see what infractions may be going on. But this is no surprise coming from a party whose leader has called a former Chief Electoral Officer a dangerous man, and whose members have accused the impartial body of carrying out a vendetta against them. Perhaps we should have seen this coming when the Conservative government started cutting the organization's budget. When? In the midst of its robocalls investigation. With the impending addition of 30 new ridings, already austere resources have been further constrained by these cuts. Perhaps that was all part of the plan, seeing as this piece of legislation also purports to muzzle Elections Canada's ability to promote voter turnout among youth, seniors, and other marginalized groups, which on their face represent the groups that tend not to vote Conservative when they do vote. It boggles the mind that Conservatives do not see increasing voter turnout as a priority, but instead feel mobilizing their own partisans as paramount and wants to legislate this. It astonishes further that this advertising-happy government would restrict the ability for an impartial organization to communicate accurate, truthful, nonpartisan information while it continues to roll out the Brinks trucks for their advertising campaigns on its non-existent job grant program. It is unfathomable that this bill would inhibit the organization we trust with the administration of our free and fair elections from communicating vital information that might encourage Canadians to fulfill their civic duty. For all of their hockey analogies, what this government has done is change the rules of the game without consulting any of the players or the officials or spectators, and they appear to be changing it to suit their own purposes. There are elements of this bill that are common sense, balanced reforms, but to include them with so many cynical attacks on Elections Canada, the Chief Electoral Officer and the investigative process is not legislating in good faith. Somewhat predictably, though sadly so, this was reinforced when the government moved closure on the bill the day after it was read for the very first time. It seems as if this government is as disinterested in consulting the people's representatives as it was in consulting their Chief Electoral Officer. I certainly hope this government will accept amendments to this bill should it reach committee, and that it might be open to more and better consultation with Canadians than they've done so far. Perhaps this was the only version of the bill that could satisfy the fears of the Conservative caucus. But if this government and its minister are truly interested in reform, they will consider truly consulting with electoral experts, including the Chief Electoral Officer, and we can reshape the bill into the best interests of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.